On behalf of the Cancer Council ACT, I would like to say welcome to our Skin Cancer Prevention Talk. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land which I am giving this presentation from, the Ngunnawal people. I would also like to pay my respects to the elders both past and present, and extend that respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people who may be viewing this presentation. This presentation will look at skin cancer statistics within the Australian population, and more specifically for firefighters. It will provide education on the types of skin cancer and the risk factors for developing skin cancer. We will discuss how skin cancer can be prevented and cover the importance of early detection and skin cancer screening. Finally, we will discuss the work, health and safety legislation which applies to firefighters. We will begin by looking at some statistics on skin cancer. Looking at skin cancer rates in Australia, we have one of the highest in the world. So 2 out of every 3 Australians will be diagnosed with a skin cancer in their lifetime. In Australia, melanoma kills more people every year than motor vehicle accidents. As you can see, all of the different types of skin cancer kill almost 1,000 people more than motor vehicle accidents every year. Sunburn indicates that we have been exposed to harmful levels of UV radiation. We know that a history of sunburn is associated with an increased risk of developing melanoma. A study done in January 2019 found that approximately 1/5 of Australian adults were sunburnt on the previous weekend. That is 21% of the Australian population. Really important to remember that skin cancer is an occupational hazard. So every year, 200 melanoma and 34,000 other skin cancer types are caused by occupational exposure. Now we will go more specifically into skin cancer information for firefighters. In July 2022, the World Health Organization assigned the occupational exposure as a firefighter as a Group 1 carcinogenic. This essentially means that there is sufficient evidence that being a firefighter makes you more susceptible to specific types of cancer. The National Agency for Research on Cancer found sufficient evidence that being a firefighter is linked to higher rates of mesothelioma and bladder cancer. They also found limited evidence that being a firefighter is linked to higher rates of colon cancer, prostate cancer, testicular cancer, melanoma of the skin, and non-Hodgkin lymphoma. As part of the National Skin Cancer Action Week, which goes from the 20th to the 26th of November, we will be focusing on melanoma of the skin. It is important to note that the strength of this evidence is specifically talking about additional risks caused by occupational exposure and is not reflective of the other factors which are associated with increased risk of melanoma and other skin cancers. We will discuss some of these later. An Australian study found that firefighters had 45% higher rates of melanoma when compared to the general population. A 2017 study in South Florida found that firefighters were more likely to be diagnosed with melanoma at a younger age. On average, firefighters were diagnosed with melanoma at 42 compared to the national average of 64. A 2016 study confirmed the link between polychlorinated biphenyls and the development of melanoma. A 2018 study confirmed that there was a link between firefighting as an occupation and the development of melanoma. We are now going to focus a little bit more on the basics of skin cancer. So the skin is actually the largest organ of the body, and it acts as a barrier to protect the body from injury, control body temperature, and prevent the loss of bodily fluids. The 2 main layers of the skin are the epidermis and the dermis. Below these, there is a layer of fatty tissue known as the hypodermis. There are two main types of skin cancer. The first is non-melanoma skin cancers, such as basal cell carcinoma and squamous cell carcinoma. And there are also obviously melanomas. Basal cell carcinomas are the most common and least dangerous form of skin cancer. They account for about 70% of non-melanoma skin cancers. Basal cell carcinoma begins in the lower layer of the epidermis, which is the top outer layer of the skin. Squamous cell carcinoma are also common and account for approximately 30% of non-melanoma skin cancers. They begin in the upper layer of the epidermis. Melanoma are less common but are more deadly. They are typically considered the most serious form of skin cancer, as they are the most likely to spread to other parts of the body, especially if they are not detected early. We will be discussing melanoma in great detail during this talk. Non-melanoma skin cancers are the most diagnosed cancer in Australia and account for approximately 81% of cases. Non-melanoma skin cancers can appear anywhere on the body, but they are most common on the head, face, neck, shoulders, and back. The two most common types of non-melanoma skin cancer are basal cell carcinomas and squamous cell carcinomas. So melanoma is the most common cancer for Australians aged 20 to 39. In 2021, melanoma was Australia's 11th most deadly cancer. Currently, melanoma is diagnosed at a rate of 28.3 per 100,000 males and 20 per 100,000 females. The median age at diagnosis of melanoma is 64 years for men and 59 for women. The 5-year relative survival rate has increased for melanoma between 1986 to 1990 and 2016 to 2020. It increased from 85% to now being around 93%. Exposure to UV radiation, both solar radiation and ultraviolet emitting tanning devices, causes 95% of melanomas. Sunlight and artificial UV rays are considered carcinogenic agents with sufficient evidence in humans. Chlorinated biphenyls, or PCBs, are another carcinogenic agent with sufficient evidence in humans for melanoma. For melanoma, the IARC classified PCBs as carcinogens with sufficient evidence in humans in 2016, and they were later confirmed as an occupational carcinogen in workers exposed during manufacture of PCB capacitors, manufacture and repair of transformers, waste incineration, recycling, and finally, firefighting. PCBs are organochlorine compounds. They're classified as persistent organic pollutants, which means they don't easily break down and that they stick around for a long time. They were used from the 1930s to the 1970s in a range of industrial products. They were also used to make coolants and lubricants for certain kinds of electrical equipment. They were phased out due to environmental impacts, including bioaccumulation in fish and mammals. For those who are from the ACT, you might recall the 2011 Mitchell fire, in which the ESI site, which was used to store and treat PCBs. In the aftermath, there was a University of Queensland report which indicated that the government failed to conduct adequate exposure testing for these PCBs. Outside of occupational risks, there are many other things which can increase your risk of skin cancer. Understanding these factors can help you be more aware and alert. You are at a higher risk of developing skin cancer if you have sunspots, lots of moles, a personal history of melanoma or a family history of melanoma, red or fair hair, light-colored eyes, so blue or green, And additionally, working outdoors. So working outdoors means you're exposed to up to 10 times the UV radiation of an indoor worker. You can learn more about your personal risk by going to scanyourskin.org's risk prediction tool. Now that we understand the risks, we can talk about how important prevention is. The sun emits different kinds of energy or radiation. The radiation we are going to be talking about today is ultraviolet radiation, or UV. This is outside the visible spectrum of light, which means that we can't see UV. It also isn't connected to heat, so we can't actually feel UV either. This makes it quite difficult to understand and can make it difficult to care about and easy to forget. UV can be measured on the UV rating scale. Ultraviolet radiation is responsible for more than 95% of all skin cancers. And specifically looking at melanomas, UV is responsible for approximately 99%. People think that protecting themselves from the sun's UV sounds simple, but many Australians, especially men, are not protecting themselves every day. This is just a snapshot of some Australian UV protection statistics. So 56% of women engage in sun protection as part of their daily routine, compared to only 45% of men. 11% of Australian men report that they always spend time outdoors during the peak hours of UV, compared to 8% of women. Skin cancer mortalities also differ by gender, with men being approximately twice as likely to die from melanoma. Lots of different things affect our UV exposure. One of them is sunscreen. So the number after SPF indicates the proportion of ultraviolet radiation which is emitted. So SPF 50 emits approximately 1/50th of the ultraviolet radiation, whereas SPF 30 emits approximately 1/30th of the UVR. This works out to SPF 50 blocking 98% of UV and SPF 30 blocking 96.7% of UV. It's important to remember that no sunscreen can block out 100% of UV. It's not a suit of armor. It's also important to remember that over 90% of UV radiation actually penetrates the clouds. So it's really important to actually check the UV levels, as looking at the sky will not tell you anything. Tree shade can also reduce UV radiation by up to 50% or more, depending on the density of the canopy. Some plants actually photosensitize the skin as well, and incinerating or burning those plants makes it a lot worse and disperses the photosensitizing chemicals. Driving is also important to consider. So a 2016 study found that while the front windshield blocks significant amounts of UV, the side windows, the driver's side window, only blocks around 71%. They block even less if you open the window. Reflection of UV is also an important issue to remember. So white sand reflects up to 15% of UV, water reflects 50% of UV, and 75% of UVA can pass through transparent glass. Recommends a combination of sun protection measures when UV levels reach 3 or above to reduce your lifetime risk of developing skin cancer. We recommend a combination of sun protection measures for outdoor workers year-round due to the cumulative effects of UV exposure. I'm sure everyone has heard at some point the famous slip, slop, and slap. However, nowadays we also include seek and slide. Seek refers to seeking shade from a tree, building, or shade sail, and slide refers to the use of sunglasses where possible. The 5 S's may sound overly simple, but our goal is a cancer-free future, and skin cancer is very preventable. In a nationally representative study, a quarter of all Australians admitted that sun protection was not a part of their daily routine. For those who do use sunscreen, they're using about half as much as they should. People only use about 40% of the sunscreen that they should be using. Proper sunscreen use reduces skin damage 7.5 times more than not protecting your skin, even when ultraviolet radiation levels are weak. For an adult, the recommended application is 5 milliliters, or approximately 1 teaspoon, for each arm, leg, body front, body back, and face, which is exposed to the sun. So this equates to about 7 teaspoons for your full body application. An even coverage of sunscreen at a greater thickness applied 20 minutes before going outside provides the best protection. It's recommended that sunscreen is applied every day as part of a regular skincare regime and reapplied every 2 hours if we're outside in the sun, even more often if we're swimming or we're sweating. We do have some SunSmart resources which are freely available to help people protect themselves from the sun. So the SunSmart widget and SunSmart app are available online. We also offer masterclasses and education sessions like this one. Finally, we have a workplace e-newsletter where we provide information and updates about sun safety and discuss case studies and what we are doing in the workplace UV protection space. Firefighters can be exposed to combustible products from fires, building materials, chemicals and firefighting foam, and other hazards. Uptake of fire effluents or other chemicals can occur through the skin, through breathing, and potentially through accidental ingestion. Firefighters rely on PPE to reduce their exposures. Self-contained breathing apparatus are usually worn during firefighting activities involving structures or vehicles, but are less likely to be used during bushfires, where firefighters may be deployed multiple times a year and may remain near the fire for several weeks. Absorption through the skin of chemicals can occur even when firefighters are wearing PPE due to limitations in design, fit, maintenance, or decontamination practices. Additionally, exposure can occur when firefighters are not actively fighting fires and are therefore not likely to be wearing PPE.
Make sure that your hood, collar, and ear flaps work together seamlessly to provide full protection. Always wear a breathing apparatus in any immediately dangerous to life or health environment. Use the wipes provided at the scene of an incident and shower as soon as possible after the incident. Clean your PPE thoroughly. Make sure that your PPC is bagged and tagged for laundering. Please refer to OP 17, dealing with soiled PPC and PPE resulting from a fire, for more information.
Next, we will discuss early detection measures for skin cancer. Make sure that you check your entire body for skin cancer, as skin cancers can sometimes occur on parts of the body that are not exposed to the sun, such as the soles of your feet, between your fingers and toes, and even under your nails. Ensure that you undress completely and make sure that you have good light. You can use a mirror to check hard to see spots like your back and scalp, or you can get a family member, partner, or trusted friend to check for you. If you notice a new spot or one that has changed, consult with your doctor. Australia recommends skin self-examination for those who are at elevated risk of skin cancer. This includes people with a significant number of moles or 5 or more dysplastic nevi, or abnormal moles. Outdoor workers and those with skin cancer as occupational hazards, such as firefighters, people who are over the age of 40, and individuals with a personal or close family history of skin cancer. This is not an exhaustive list, and you can check your risk using the Scan Your Skin risk prediction tool we discussed earlier. Some of you might be thinking, but do skin checks actually help? And the answer is yes. Many skin cancers are detected by the individual or by a family member. One study found that 44% of those with confirmed melanomas had actually detected it themselves. Self-examination of the skin reduces the risk of advanced melanomas by 63%, as thinner lesions are more likely to be detected. Skin self-examination is also linked with increased detection of very small, less than or equal to 1 millimeter thick lesions, which have 95% 5-year survival rates. Studies have shown that 64% of men and 70% of women regularly self-check their skin for diseases, including skin cancer. Now, it's unlikely in a country like Australia that people have never seen a skin cancer before, but it's important to discuss what skin cancers actually look like. So, a basal cell carcinoma typically appears as a round or flattened lump or a scaly area. They are typically red, pale, or pearly in color, and they grow slowly over months or years. They are usually found on the head, neck, and upper torso, but may also appear in other parts of the body. They can become ulcerated, bleed, or fail to heal. Cell carcinomas typically look like a red scaly spot, are usually thickened, and may bleed easily or ulcerate after some time. They're often quite painful, especially to the touch. They typically grow over weeks or months, and they might spread if they're not treated. They appear on parts of the body which are most often exposed to the sun. Melanomas typically appear as a new spot or an existing spot, freckle, or mole, which changes in color, size, or shape. They usually have irregular or smudgy outlines and may be more than one color. They can sometimes appear as a lump with little or no brown pigment, as a reddish patch, or like a blood blister. They grow over weeks to months, anywhere on the body, so not just in places which get a lot of sun. If untreated, the cancer cells can spread to other parts of the body. To help with the detection of melanoma, there is an ABCDE melanoma detection guide. A stands for asymmetry. So in a melanoma, the two halves might not match. B stands for border. So the edges of the mole may be uneven and might be scalloped or notched. C stands for color. So they might be multiple colors. So brown, tan, black, red, or blue could appear in the same mole. D stands for diameter. Melanoma are usually larger than a pencil eraser, about 6 millimeters, but lesions might be smaller. And E stands for evolving. Any changes in a mole's size, shape, color, elevation, or any other trait, as well as bleeding, itching, or crusting, should be noted. If you find any changes or you have a skin cancer concern, the first step is to see your GP. Your GP knows your history, can examine your skin, and can advise you regarding appropriate care. GPs are actually able to treat some skin cancers, but will also refer you to a specialist if necessary. Specialist doctors who treat skin cancer include dermatologists, who are doctors who have completed extra training specifically in skin diseases, along with plastic surgeons and some general surgeons. You will typically require a referral and should ask about fees and also what will be covered by Medicare. Skin cancer clinics are usually operated by GPs and may offer bulk billing for some of their services. You do not need a referral to go to a skin cancer clinic. That being said, it can take around 3 to 6 months, so seeing your GP is likely the way to go. The Royal Australian College of General Practitioners recommends that high-risk individuals, so those with 5 or more dysplastic nevi or abnormal moles, and a personal history of melanoma or the history of a close relative, should self-examine every 3 months and might benefit from self-photography. So that means that you might benefit from taking photos of any moles. Important to remember that UV protection and melanoma prevention are actually work health and safety issues. So the workplace is a major source of UV exposure for many adults, and skin cancer is a national occupational disease priority area. It is considered an employment-related disease, which means there is a legal obligation involved. If you work outdoors for part or most of the day, then you're exposed to more UV. Employers have to provide adequate information on hazards, as well as instruction, training, and supervision to help you do your work safely. They must provide you with personal protective equipment, so PPE, which is appropriate for the job. They must protect workers as much as is reasonably practicable against skin and eye damage. Workers also have responsibilities. It's important to take all reasonable steps to care for your health and well-being. It's important to cooperate with your employer, which means that you need to follow all safety instructions, respect and use equipment such as PPE properly, and report any risk, illness, or injury which is connected with work to the employer. Fair protection for firefighters exists. So under Comcare, there was an expansion in 2022 to include primary site skin cancer with a qualifying period of 15 years. If you believe you might be covered by this, or for more information about workers' compensation coverage for firefighters, please feel free to check out Comcare's scheme guidance, disease provisions related to firefighters, or call 1300 366 979 or visit the website. That brings us to the conclusion of our talk. Please complete our survey as it provides us with invaluable information about how you found the talk and how to improve it for future audiences. You can access the survey through the QR code or through the link on the screen. On behalf of the SunSmart ACT team at the Cancer Council ACT, we would like to thank you for watching this presentation. If you would like to get in contact with us, our contact details are available on the screen.